Hey everybody, it's Samwise, community herbalist, and today we're talking about the rune of the month, which is Thurisaz, which looks like this. Hopefully that's not backwards for you. So I picked this yesterday, and I was sort of like, oh no, because I sort of had this impression that this rune is about like it's called like a thorn. It's associated with like the mythic people of, or like the mythic creatures of giants in Norse mythology, which are kind of posed as these like kind of the bad guys a lot of the time, which I don't know about. I went and I read some Norse mythology. I read the book of Norse mythology that was written by Neil, or like retold by Neil Gaiman, which I like his writing style, and also still those stories are like so full of patriarchy and so just I wonder how regurgitated like through empire and like through like civilization and shit they are, because some of them I was just like, wow, like you can still feel kind of some of the bones of some useful like ways of relating to the earth and like the elements and the people of the earth, but still there's a lot of bullshit. So I think maybe giants maybe get a bad rap. Not sure, because this rune is also about like resistance to the I'm like looking in different sources, and one of the sources that I'm enjoying pulling from is called runesecrets.com. And the way the author says it is like that this symbol and this energy is a forceful enemy of unconsciousness, ignorance, and the rule of brute force. So yeah, that obviously makes me think about like what's happening with the police and like how police are used by our culture to enforce white supremacy and the bonds of capitalism. And yeah, this energy. I'll just back up and say something else about giants, which I think is interesting. In that book, the Neil Gaiman book about Norse mythology, he shares a story about the origin of the world in that cosmology, and apparently there was like in the very, very, very beginning there was a giant, and this giant had multiple genders. So and then in the story they like have to kill the giant of multiple genders in order to like create the world and humankind. So my brain kind of goes like, oh no, like that's me, like that's I feel some recognition with the in-betweenness of gender and like that connection, like the body as a representation of earth. So yeah, I don't know, I get curious around like kind of those stories and like that origin or that like marker of time in those stories being like, here is a point at which like these cultures or these stories maybe are like diverging from a more like earth identified way of being. Just I'm like, don't kill the queer giant. So yeah, so that's some thoughts about giants in mythology, in Norse mythology. But yeah, more about Thurisaz, which again I've sort of like been a little like standoffish from, but as I like dug into this symbol and this like naming of this particular kind of energy, it's kind of badass. Like it is very much this like protective, this emblem of protective force, and this emblem of like standing up to like injustice, or like, yeah, again the rule of brute force. And it also talks about like the complexities of that's not often really like cut or dry. Like I know sometimes in leftist movement spaces, the conversation between like strict nonviolence, or like the right to use protective force, or use like self-defense, or use even like whatever, you know, kind of force, we can get kind of stuck there because it's complex, and there's lots of different situations in which it might be right and appropriate for someone to protect themselves from harm that's coming towards them. Like, you know, I don't pretend to understand all of the context around like what happened with the death of the teenager in Columbus. Michaela, I want to make sure I'm saying that name right, but yeah, there's all this shaming and blaming and like vitriol on the internet right now because she was carrying a knife to protect herself. And like ultimately, you know, is it wrong to protect yourself? Like, is it wrong to like be fierce in yourself? Like, maybe not, unless like this whole culture has a problem with like Black people who are like fierce and protecting themselves. Maybe that's the problem. So yeah, so anyway, so this is the rune that I pulled for this month as like a meditation. And yeah, it again like has complexities to it, and also is like really powerful in that it's like aligning, you know, used in a good way, and used in a way that's like aligned with justice, like real ass justice, not like just like slapping, you know, the the guilty verdict on something and just like, you know, perpetuating the whole system of carceral racism, but like actual justice of healing and like setting energies correctly and like repairing harm. So this symbol and this energy, when aligned with justice in that way, is incredibly powerful. And so some of the like associations that it has with it are unconscious forces, sociological forces, chaos, and destruction by natural forces. So if you think about like a power, just extremely powerful storm, that's nature, that's the power of elements aligning and like coming together and then dissipating. And yeah, like, so this symbol of like Thurisaz is kind of combating or bringing to light energy through conflict. And so it's more associations like the complexity of aggression, conflict, disputes, breakthroughs, breaking through barriers, the thorn of awakening. That's the other association this symbol has, is a thorn. So if you think about like think about stepping on or like accidentally grabbing a thorn, if you're gonna like go pick a rose or something, the pain, right, that's gonna stop you and be like, okay, oh my god, you know, that would change your consciousness. And yeah, so again, this energy and this rune and this symbol has a complexity to it. So like that pain of awakening, destructive storms, regenerative catalyst. And again, it also has this association with birth and like fertility, because it's like, not only if you think about like thorns or thorny plants, like, you know, we often come across like really intense blackberry growing in some of the places that not a lot of other things, well, they're not growing there because the blackberry is there, but it has the power, those roots and those thorns and those like very, very strong branches have the ability to break up a bunch of soil. And so if we're thinking about this energy of like catalyst, regenerative catalyst, that is like breaking up shit that needs to be broken up so that this new consciousness and awareness can come through. Similarly associated with like vital eroticism. So again, like this energy of life, and this like aliveness coming through. Constructive conflict and like protective energies are also part of this rune. As well as like, yeah, the destruction of enemies and curses, which like I wonder about. Yeah, like, you know, always these questions of like, where did white supremacy come from? Like, how, you know, did we get on this trajectory of war and empire? And one of my like theories, which, you know, is purely intuitive and I have nothing to base it off of other than my like kind of felt experiences, is that like white supremacy is a curse. laid down by ancestors of mine who, like, maybe didn't want to be vulnerable in the same ways that they were ever again, but, like, laid this curse, and now it's up to us to break it. So, you know, who knows? Maybe that is it, maybe it's not, but that's one way that I think about that energy. And so, yeah, this energy of Thurisaz is, like, a curse can be used in a way of, like, breaking curses or breaking that energy of trajectory over time. It's also associated with awakening the will to action. So we see how, like, really sadly and unfortunately, like, a lot of violence can be, like, calls to action for folks to, like, and that grief can be a wake-up call. And also, you know, for folks who, you know, need that. And it also can be really, really exhausting and awful and just fucking awful. So I don't want to say that that's everyone's experience across the board. But yeah, that's I thought it was interesting that this rune has that association of, like, awakening the will to action, which I found can be associated with grief sometimes, especially, like, grief around death that is undignified or fucking tragic, or, like, that shouldn't have happened. There can be this activating clarity that can come, that I found with witnessing or understanding or being close to that energy. Yeah, and then finally I'll say that again, this, like, energy where this rune kind of calls up the energy of a warrior that combines consciousness and wisdom to matters that require force. So I forget who said it. Maybe I'll try to look it up. But just, like, the idea that, like, power concedes nothing without a demand, or, like, that, you know, there have been lots of people who've said different iterations of, like, you know, white supremacy and power aren't going to just, like, feel badly for, like, what's happening and then all of a sudden just, like, hand power over. Like, it's it takes some force sometimes. Like, it can take, and that can take many different shapes and many different iterations, but it's not a passive thing. So yeah, so calling in this energy of, like, protective force and justice and, like, I want to say, like, retribution, or, like, but not in, like, I don't want to say, like, in, like, a revenge sort of way, but really in this, like, aligning with the powers and the aliveness of the earth and its peoples, and being that warrior energy in a way that acknowledges, like, that using our power as human beings is necessary sometimes, and especially honoring that coming from people of color seems really, really important. So, like, you know, not saying a bunch of shit about, like, how people are protesting, or, like, you know, creating space for imaginations for what people might do in movement spaces, and, like, trusting that evolution and that unfolding, and providing material support when needed, money, materials, you know, your witnessing or support. It kind of depends on what's happening, but yeah, so that's the energy that's here this month, and, like, it's interesting that, yeah, some of my ancestors had a name for it, and this is, like, you know, what I'm thinking about in terms of resisting white supremacy, resisting, like, imperialism, resisting, like, the mechanisms of police state and carceral capitalism. I don't know if that's what my ancestors, like, had in mind, but I'm really appreciating that here's this touchstone of understanding that can provide some usefulness and context across time, and yeah, the overall general energy that I get from this is like super badass and like can be used irresponsibly, but like when used responsibly, like when you know, the warrior energy that combines consciousness and wisdom in matters that require force, like I think that can be really fortifying and that can be really catalyzing if we like call upon that energy in like a serious and well, it doesn't have to be serious, but like in a responsible way. And also supporting that and like, you know, fanning the flames of that in resistant movements of people of color, because that's what's gonna save us all. um, yeah. Okay, well, that's that for this month. Thanks again to all of my patrons who are making this exploration possible. I want to thank you all by name. And yeah, I'm going to say thank you to Paris, iTech, Kathleen, Marguerite, Tatiana, Jax, Melissa, Serafina, Felix, M, Sonura, Anna, Natalia, Anna Weeker, and Lo, Ellie Minkin, Deborah, SM, Monica, Karen, Gloria, Adrian, Susan, Gaia, Bonnie Rose, Brittany Hall, and Seed. Thank you all so much for helping to make these explorations out there and possible. And yeah, we got some good stuff coming up. This Sunday we have the Sapling Circle, which is like a community support space that's pretty freeform and supporting people's like goals, like healing goals and like magical journeys. And yeah, right now it's all white folks who are working on unlearning white supremacy and like kind of getting down with their lineages, so and like understanding that. So that's that space coming up. And then we have some fun magical classes on divination and flower essence making and ancestral healing coming up in the next few months, so you can check that out on my Patreon for more information. Okay, hope you're having a lovely day. Hope you're taking care of yourselves in the way that makes sense for you, and I hope that you are, yeah, like fortifying your spirit and caring for others in the ways that you can. Okay, talk to you soon.